a completely different type of training.
Well, we do kind of both ends, right? So on the one end of the spectrum, what we want to do is increase our mitochondrial capacity to maximize aerobic metabolism. And there are two ways to do that, meaning you have to do two things. So the way I describe this to people is the way one of my coaches described it to me when I was a fledgling cyclist. Your aerobic capacity is a pyramid, and the area of that pyramid is your total aerobic capacity. And to have the largest area of a pyramid, you need the widest base and the highest peak, right? A pyramid with a narrow base and a high peak, not as good. A pyramid with a very wide base and a shallow peak, also not great. You want wide base, high peak. Well, in that analogy, the base is your zone 2 threshold, right? It's how much work can you do while keeping lactate at that sort of threshold that George Brooks and Inigo San Milan talk about, of about 2 millimole. So what differentiates the best aerobic athletes from someone, say with type 2 diabetes, which would be the opposite end of that spectrum where you have real metabolic dysfunction, or rather mitochondrial dysfunction, we're talking a 4-fold difference in watts per kilo output. And you just have to train at that level. You have to get to that threshold and train right there. So, this morning, that was the workout I did, right? It was a zone 2 ride where I'm just riding right at a lactate level of 1.9 millimole was where I was today. But you do need to do what you're describing as well. You have to do the pyramid building. You have to build the peak of that pyramid. Those are the VO2 max sets. And generally the sweet spot for building those is 3 to 8 minutes of all-out effort for the respective duration. So obviously what you can do for 3 minutes and no more is harder than what you might be able to do for 8 minutes and no more. My favorite are 4 minutes. So for example, on Sunday, that was my workout. I actually did an hour of that zone 2, kind of 2 millimole stuff, and then did 4-minute awful repeats where it was like much, much higher power for 4 minutes. And then I rested for 4 minutes and then went again for 4 minutes and then rested for 4 minutes. And at the end of those 4-minute blocks, my lactate will be 15 or 16. And,
wow.
And then at the end of a 4-minute rest, it might be down to 6 or 7. And then we do it again and do it again and do it again. So yeah, long-winded way of saying you want both, right? You want to build that pyramid to be as wide and as tall as possible. What I don't think I appreciated, though, was that the brain is getting a benefit from those lactate peaks.
Yes, it's getting a benefit. And they don't it's cleared quite quickly.
Yeah.
So, it's
minutes.
It's minutes.
If you do nothing, if you just stopped, and of course, athletes are even better at this, right? Like an amazing athlete would clear lactate within, they'd go from 10 millimole to 2 millimole in minutes. Yeah.
For me, 20 minutes later, I'm back to my 0.9, millimole baseline. But, that lactate also it's important for neurotransmitter synthesis. You're making glutamate, the major excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. It's important for making precursors to that. Norepinephrine. These have all been shown in human studies, also animal studies. So for me, I do a lot of Tabata training. And
so that's even more intense because you're only doing 20 seconds on and 10 seconds off. So that's really intense. Yeah.
It is. I do. And I do 16 of those. So I do, 8 and then separated by a 30-second, break. And then I do another 8.
And so two 4-minute blocks.
Yeah. And then, it's a total of about 10 minutes. But so the first minute I'm in zone 2. And then by the end of that minute, I'm zone 3. And then I go into zone 4, so it's
and what are you doing this on? Are you doing this on an air bike?
Peloton. I'm doing it on a Peloton,
okay.
Right? And my Apple Watch is beaming my heart rate and my zones onto my screen, which is they're all estimated, of course. Again,
yeah.
So, but I do that five days a week. It's again, I think, for me, the efficiency also. So I'm trying to maximize the neurobiological effects for me with exercise, and I really find pretty compelling evidence that intensity is really important with respect to that for the brain. Not that there isn't a benefit for, lower intensity exercise, but it's certainly people doing, moderate intensity, like the more time you put in, like the volume of training, right, is like, you're going to probably find some equivalent there, right? But with the lactate, though, that's the one mechanism I'm like, that is really something I personally am trying to optimize for. And it's definitely a consequence of intensity, right? But the fact that it's cleared so quickly and it's transient, like I'm wanting a lot of it, like each day. I'm wanting to keep doing it, right? Like, so I kind of I do those types of training.
But there are other ways to do it that you might want to consider, right? So you might want to say, look, I'll do those Tabatas 2 days a week. I'll do some longer, slower cardio. And to be clear, like when I'm doing that zone 2, it's not trivial. Like, I mean, I'm